Hey everybody, Wisco Bisco here. So I finished the Xenoblade 3 DLC, and I have been itching to talk about it. This DLC is something that both myself and many of you have been looking forward to. Back when the base game came out, I made this video where I discussed some thoughts I had on the original ending. I was disappointed with the lack of explanation when it came to the connections between Xenoblade 3 and the first two games. I also was hoping to learn more about Riku, Lucky 7, and the fate of Rex and Shulk. But most of all, I was hoping for some explanation of the post-credits scene where young Noah hears the flute and disappears. Well, the DLC certainly delivered by adding context to the original ending, but also by giving closure to the Xenoblade Chronicles saga as a whole. So let's break this down. First up, Riku. In the base game, Riku is this odd Nopon
common variety
who just happens to possess the quote-unquote special sword of this game. He has connections to one of the most iconic and powerful characters, and he gives some mean pep talks to our heroes when they're feeling down. And the base game lets him get away with all of this with no explanation. Thankfully, in the DLC, we are given some much-needed backstory. Riku tells us that his dad was a traveling companion of Melia, which means his father is Riki. Or his father is Kino from Future Connected, and therefore he's the grandson of Riki. He also tells us about Lucky 7 and the reason he has it. He tells us that Lucky 7 is made of the same metal as Origin, which we knew from the base game, I'm pretty sure. But he expands on this importance by explaining that the memories and souls of those in Origin are in the very metal of the sword itself. Specifically, according to his master, dearly important people reside in it. It's sweet and heartwarming to think that the heroes of the previous games were helping us all.
Our friends are going to die! Stop! Fiora!
Maybe scratch that. Anyways, Riku's mission was to hold on to the sword until he found a person worthy of it. Speaking of Lucky 7, one of my critiques of the main game was that the special sword, aka the Sword of Origin, / Lucky 7, / generic red sword, / sheath for the Sword of Origin, / red gauntlets, was just kind of there without any lore explanation. However, the DLC showed us that Numa's core crystal was powering Matthew's gauntlets, which presumably get passed on to Noah as his red gauntlet, / red sword, /
JRPG.
That's pretty cool. In the past, I had called Noah's red sword a red herring, and it seemed to just be a generic red sword to match the other two games, while Lucky 7 was the true special sword. I'm glad that the DLC cleared this up. It highlights just how much power Noah had at his disposal, which helps to reinforce just how dire the world's situation was for all the characters of the Xenoblade Chronicles series. Speaking of previous characters, it was so exciting to see Rex and Shulk once more, and all grown up. Their interactions with each of their children were really great to see as well. Matthew, A, and Glimmer were all really cool characters, I thought. Nickel was fine, but he was just kind of there. The same goes for Niall. I was distracted from some of her most important moments by that radio, and I know I'm not alone here. N even got some nice screen time, which added a lot of depth to his character. I liked how they revealed that he didn't necessarily set out to destroy the city. He was after Alpha, and the city was just kind of in the way. The gameplay tweaks were really nice. I enjoyed the new enemy encounter types, the upgrade system, and the exploration rewards. My favorite tweak was the chain attack modifiers. I spent so much time going through all the different possibilities. It was awesome seeing the iconic landmarks from the previous two games as well. Although I will say, I felt that Xenoblade 1 received way more attention than 2 did. But overall, the DLC told a nice, concise little origin story. It was a nice bridge from the end of Xenoblades 1 and 2 to the founding of the city. My favorite scene was seeing Rex and Shulk walk side by side with A as they prepared to maintain Origin until Noah and friends came along. It really showed just how powerful Rex and Shulk became and how far they had come. Okay, now for the post-credits ending. We clearly see the merged worlds splitting apart before coming together again. This time in a proper, non-destructive manner. The singular world that existed before Klaus's experiment exists once more. My biggest gripe with the base game's ending was the ambiguity revolving around young Noah hearing the flute and disappearing. However, I believe that the DLC post-credits ending adds just enough context for it to be understood. The scene of the worlds separating clearly takes place while our heroes are running towards each other at the end of the main game. Okay, that part seems straightforward, but what about the flute? In the base game's post-credits scene, it's obvious that Mio is the one playing the flute. I mean, who else would it be? The flute part raises two questions. First, is she physically nearby? Or is Noah only able to hear her? And in either case, how? They're supposed to be in separate worlds. The second question is why? Why is Mio playing her flute? In the base game, there is one other post-credits tidbit after young Noah that I think a lot of people forgot about, myself included. After the post-credits scene ends, the Monolith Soft logo appears, and then the New Game Plus info cards appear. But after that, we get a brief scene of Mio's diary, with her explaining how she is beginning to forget Noah, but she is certain that they will meet again. Initially, I didn't think much of that scene, and chalked it up to be some kind of power of love type cope for some disappointed fans. However, the scene is actually important because it reveals to us that memories from the combined world are kept after the worlds separate, but not for long. The only thing we don't know is, are memories restored after the merger? Now, the base game conveyed enough for us to know that young Noah was out of the cycle and in his own world. We didn't know much about the status of any potential merger during the scene with young Noah. But now, taking into consideration the scene of the worlds merging, what if Mio, in her own world, is forgetting Noah and plays a tune on her flute that she associates with him? As the worlds begin to merge properly, Noah can hear the tune, but cannot see her. The moment Noah disappears is the exact moment the worlds reunite. I think this is a reasonable and satisfying explanation. What happens after this is up to our imagination. Are their memories restored? Or are their fading memories just enough to reunite them once more? Now look, my first reaction after the DLC post-credits scene was disappointment. I was holding out until the Monolith Soft logo came up, and then the disappointment set in. Here's some audio I recorded live as I was experiencing it. No, that's it? What the heck was that? There's seriously nothing else. No. Really? That's so disappointing. Man, that's so disappointing. Really? After all that talk of, "Oi, seeing each other again." "Oi, seeing each other again." I was expecting a scene with Noah and Mio. Even if it was just a brief scene of them catching a glimpse of each other in the combined world, regardless of whether or not they remembered each other. But we didn't get that. And I felt the same way I did half a year ago. Disappointed and incomplete. The DLC had the tall order of not only closing out Xenoblade 3, but Xenoblade Chronicles as a whole. As an ending for the series, I thought it was perfect. The message of Xenoblade Chronicles has always been very clear. Where there is a future, there is limitless potential. This message is spelled out very clearly with Shulk, Fiora, and Alvis at the end of the first game, and it stretches all the way to the end credits of the DLC for the final game, where the lyrics of the song, which is called Future Awaits, by the way, speak about being afraid to move into an unknown future, yet pressing on regardless. Heck, this message is even conveyed at the end of Xenosaga Episode 3, and if that blue light is indeed kos-mos, as I and many others think is likely, then it hammers home the message all the more. I'm glad we didn't get any sort of fan-servicey montage of all our characters sitting around the table acting like one big happy family, because tonally, I think it would have been off. What we got was a mature, satisfying ending for the series, where each and every character can now seize their future in the newly re-merged world. It comes full circle back to what Alvis spoke about at the end of the first game, about all life walking hand in hand toward the limitless future. It's a series that ends with a message of unbridled hope and optimism, one that Shulk, Rex, and Noah believe in. Now, as a conclusion to Xenoblade 3 specifically, I thought the DLC was good, but not perfect. The questions it answered, the mysteries it solved, and the context it added all enhanced the base game. However, I can't help but feel disappointed at the lack of an on-screen reunion between Noah, Mio, and all the others. We know that they are in the same world, and they are bound to meet again. If we buy into their optimism, that is. Xenoblade 3 features some of the most emotional scenes in the series. It is also a long game. As such, the audience will no doubt get invested in these characters and want to see them succeed. In the base game, our main characters were given a decision to make, with a harsh consequence. Noah and his friends understood the personal cost of saving the world. A cost so great that Nia even gave them a chance to reconsider at the very end. Yet, despite knowing they would be separated from each other, they pressed on because they embraced the message of the series. That is, where there is a future, no matter how uncertain, there is limitless potential. I just can't help but feel that it is unrewarding, not just to the players who became so invested in these characters, but to the characters themselves. They earned a reunion after making such a selfless decision and embracing the hope of the future. In my previous video, I talked about the end of Xenoblade 2 and compared it with that of Xenoblade 3. Prior to 3's DLC, its ending felt like Xenoblade 2's ending, but without the post-credits scene. Pyra and Mithra sacrificed themselves to ensure a future for Rex and company. Heroic? Yes. Hopeful? Yeah. Disappointing for fans and characters alike? Definitely. Xenoblade 3's DLC made its ending feel like the equivalent of 2's ending, but Pyra and Mithra don't appear. Picture this. Rex notices Numa's core crystal glowing, looks up, and believes that they are out there somewhere and they're all destined to meet again. Still heroic, still hopeful, still kind of disappointing, but not quite as bad. Pyra and Mithra's reappearance transforms that scene into something exciting and rewarding, just as Noah and Mio's reunion would have done for 3. But hey, the DLC gave us what it did, and I think it improved the ending. I am definitely more content today than I was a few months ago. But speaking of Xenoblade 2, I know there were some fans of Nia who were, shall we say, slightly disappointed with her treatment in that game. Who would have guessed that Nia would be one of the central characters of Xenoblade 3, and even receive some surprising relationship developments? Or consider Kos-mos, who, if we assume once more that that blue light is Kos-mos, finally gets an appearance after how many years? Who would have ever guessed that? My point is, and I do mean to get kind of meta here, you have no idea what the future has in store. In 2 decades, a future Xeno game could reconnect to the Xenoblade trilogy and show us Noah, Mio, and the other characters together, just in the same way that Kos-mos patiently awaited a cameo. Here's a crazy idea. It was recently announced that there would be Noah and Mio Amiibos. Try saying that 3 times fast. How crazy would it be if scanning them unlocked a tiny little cutscene of them reuniting? I'm just saying, you never know what could happen. Anyways, I enjoyed this DLC a lot. It cleared up a lot of questions I had, and added a lot of context to important parts of the game. The story, gameplay, and characters were nice, and it was fun to play through. Most importantly, it made me feel more satisfied about the ending. I think some explanations should have just been in the base game to begin with, but hey, we got what we got. I do wish the DLC got a physical release for future preservation reasons, but that's a problem for the future. I could go on and on about this game's ending and the Xenoblade trilogy as a whole, and I might make a deep dive video about those topics in the future, so stay tuned. Anyways, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this DLC and the game's ending. Were all of your questions answered? Are you satisfied with what we got? Am I totally off base? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Wisco Bisco out.